Welcome back to the show, Business Mastery for Startups, Scale-Ups, and Early Stage Businesses with your host, Jerry Gadori. That's me. And this week, I'm super excited to have growth hack expert Anuj Adhiya, who I perpetually mispronounce his last name, and I'll apologize in advance. Anuj has, and this is rare for somebody who's been around the block as long as I have, ideas around growth that I have not heard before. I usually give a more detailed description of their background, but frankly, I want to get after it because I've been doing this for over 30 years, and this is stuff that's new to me, so I suspect new to many of you as well. Anuj, a little bit more about your background, and let's dive into it.
Yeah. So this is actually an accidental career for me, and maybe that's why you
Best
feel like
kind.
I say things you might not have heard before, because I have a background in the sciences in biochemistry and chemistry. What I found out was that perhaps prepared me a little bit better to be more naturally experimental. Which is kind of what you do in the sciences, and found out that all this fancy growth stuff is nothing but applying the scientific method to growth and marketing. So instead of chemicals in a lab, it was pixels on a screen. And the other thing that I didn't realize that I got trained for was a more holistic view of things, rather than what I found out was a more traditional approach of just lobbing campaigns over a wall week over week, which shockingly common even today. And so what that gave me an appreciation for was, the entire customer journey, and how things at one end relate to things at the other end, right? And not just in the context of, let's say, a funnel, which might be the most simple way to think about it, but also through the context of the life cycle of a company, because there are things you do to prep to make things successful down the line. And so that's the kind of thing that gave me maybe a slightly different appreciation for things like product market fit. What happens after? How do you prep for it? What does it look like? What does success look like later, and what could you do to lay foundations better?
If I could jump in for just a second, I can't think of anyone in my career who chose sales or recruiting, who said as a high schooler, I'm going to become a salesperson or recruiter. Back when I was early in my staffing days, back when I was doing that stuff, the most common degree that I had was psychology and music. Because an undergrad in psychology is would you like fries with that job path if you're not continuing your education? So it's common to see those guys in sales. But you are the first person that has advanced training in science and was a scientist first. And I can definitely imagine how that impacted your perspective and why you have such a more structured approach, focusing on things. I think a lot of people attach a lot of almost mysticism around growth, whereas your approach seems much more, I don't want to say formulaic, but certainly more structured. And you mentioned post PMF. I think that there's a gap between when PMF happens, when that company finds its product market fit and it's on point, and scale happens where a lot of things can go wrong. What are your thoughts on that?
Percent, right? Because the thing I discovered was that all product market fit means is that you have discovered how to deliver value,
Yes.
right? Or let me qualify that back. Actually, let me say that slightly differently. All you have discovered is that you have value for a specific segment of people. That is all you have discovered, because all product market fit is a test of must haveness. It's a test of retention, right? Of very strong high retention. That's all it is, right? And when you try to get to product market fit, you do a lot of things that are unscalable, unrepeatable, right? Which is why I say all you've discovered is that you have value, because you're just trying desperately to find these people who can't live without your product, right? But as you get towards the end of product market fit is when you start to discover a few things you can start to repeat. For example, you discover, oh, this is the kind of person I should be talking to or letting into my product experience. That's the biggest thing you learn. The second thing you learn is these are the kinds of things I should say to understand if I'm even talking to the right person. Or when I present my solution to somebody, here are the words I should use, or these are the kinds of things I should show them. right? For the light bulb to go off, because a huge part of getting to product market fit is understanding the language of the person you're going after, so that you can articulate the problem as well as the solution correctly in a way that they understand it, not the way you want to present it, right?
Yeah, if I could hop there for just a quick minute. Product market fit means you found your market and you have something they want. But that and scale use different letters because they're different things. So
100%.
and you brought up one other point real quick, and I'm sorry to interrupt. I think it's not a bad thing that you do things that can't scale in the beginning, because that's how you find out what you need. Once you've got that fit, now is when questions of scale should happen. But before that,
Correct.
it's just about finding who your audience is and why they love you.
Correct, right? Because part of what you're trying to discover during product market fit is as much about who needs this, right? But you're also trying to figure out, how do I find these people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you're also trying to figure out, uh, how do they articulate the primary value they get out of the product, right? And shockingly, it turns out these three things, knowing who to talk to, where to find them, and what language to use with them, turn out to be the three pillars of marketing. And that is a huge mistake people make beforehand. Is like, oh, I need to do marketing. Like, no, you don't even know what you're marketing. You
Yes.
don't know who you're marketing to. Like, what are you going to do? Like, you want to waste money, give it to me. Like, I'll happily take it. Google and Meta don't need more money.
Yeah. I'll save you 50% of your marketing budget. Give me 50% and keep the other.
Absolutely. We'll both sleep better. And so that's part of why there is this phase in between scale and product market fit, because what you need to do after product market fit is say, okay, I have found the value I can deliver. Now let me find the best way to deliver value to these people. And you use your learnings of, who am I going after, what message am I going after, where am I going to find them, and that's the marketing bit, right? So that's how you find the people. But now you also use information you have discovered through getting to product market fit, is to, hey, how did the people who truly stuck around behave? Because you want any new person, once you have a strong sign of product market fit, and I'm going to come back a little bit to what product market fit means in just a second, because I want to make this completely clear. You want to make sure that whoever you put through the product experience behaves as well or as closely as the people who behaved like your ideal customer during the getting to product
Yes.
market fit phase, right? Which means that it's not just about getting them in, it means about giving them the kind of product experience where they don't need the kind of hand holding and the unscalable things you did during the product market fit phase, because now you're going to go after more people. You don't have the bandwidth to do this, right? So what this means is, not only are you trying to figure out, now what have I learned during getting to product market fit about getting the right people in, and where I find them and what I say to them, but what do they experience first, right? So the light bulb goes off quickly. So this is a lot about figuring out first experiences, right? So that when you decide to scale, you have validated learning about, if I put X kind of person through Y kind of experience, I can expect Z kind of outcome. Without that formula being solved, if you just go straight into scale, you have no idea what to expect when people come through and experience your product. So there is this transition to growth phase that I think is the most critical phase of figuring out this equation of, I'm going to put X kind of person through Y kind of experience, and I can anticipate Z kind of outcome, right? Because then when you scale, you know that, okay, if I put 100 people, through my funnel, I can anticipate 10% of them will stay. And that means, so and so dollars in revenue, because that's what matters at the end of the day.
So what I'm hearing is, and please correct me if I'm not articulating this well, between product market fit and scale, there needs to be a discovery period where you interpret not only what it was, the value that you brought, but why it brought value, how they're utilizing that, and how they're communicating about it. Am I articulating
Yes,
that properly?
correct. Right. So let me put that now through the lens of how I evaluate product market fit. right? So I look at three signals. One signal is it's just pure retention, and it's strong retention. Like, and I mean, like, if we're talking, let's say B2C products, I'd say if you don't have 80% retention over time, and what I mean by time is every product has its own natural frequency of use.
Yes.
Some products are daily use, some are weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever. But there's a natural frequency. So what I like to look at is if it's a daily product, at least 4 weeks. If it's a weekly product, also at least 4 weeks. If it's a little longer, I try to look at least 4 uses consecutively that delivered value. So a lot of what finding product market fit is understanding what is this measure of value that I can look at, that if I look at it, I see that that keeps happening at the natural frequency of use of the product, right? Because nobody comes back and uses products again and again they don't find value in.
Yes. So could I interrupt just to make sure again I understand? So we want to make sure that we're seeing whatever its regular usage is, 4 cycles of that usage, so we can see how they're using it, how they're communicating about it. Are they coming back to us in the frequency we expected? Is that the type of data you're trying to gather?
Correct. You all of it, right? So this is just the quantitative piece, right?
Yes.
There are other pieces like you said, absolutely, right? And then the reason I have started to index on four, right, is that the first time somebody tries something, it's like, okay, this is something new,
Novelty.
right? Second time, you're like, was there something there? Did I see what I saw? Let me just kick the tires properly this time. Third time, generally nobody comes back thrice, to anything that they don't find value in. But I like to just, put the final nail in the coffin and say, if it's four, like there is no mistaking anything at this point in time,
Yeah,
right?
I could practically see your lab coat. You're removing any statistical anomalies.
So, but that's just the quantitative piece, right? So I'm like, okay, I have very high retention, so I want to see like between 60 to 80% of people who are into the product experience using it. Why does it need to be that high? Because I want confidence through just the numbers that I'm actually getting the right people into the experience, that a high number of them are sticking around. If I find that my retention is bouncing all over the place, that is me saying, and you will pardon my French, but this is the technical term for this, you have pissed in your own pool, right? And that's what happens to a lot of people,
I think that's West Virginia, not French, but I hear you.
right? But that's a really common thing that happens to people, that they will accept anybody who shows even some mild enthusiasm and say, hey, come in and use my product, when you need to be really militant about who gets to use it, right? So that your retention cohort stays stable over time. So I look for high retention cohorts that are stable over time,
Yes,
right?
I don't want to go too far afield, but I think it's a related tangent. I think having been a startup founder numerous times, in the beginning, you don't care who your customer is, you care that there is one. But what
Right.
I'm hearing is you got to get past that phase quickly, because if there's no commonality in your ICP, everything you're describing, I would imagine, would be, if not impossible, very, very difficult.
Absolutely. And this is a big reason why, the startup failure rate is so high.
Yes.
You just build for some vague signal from people who don't care.
Yeah, and I'll take it one step further. Going past the startup failure rate, also the reason why most service businesses, especially technology services businesses in the United States, never exceed $10 million in revenue. If
Yep.
memory serves, it's less than 10% that make it past 10 million. And the reason, very simply, is that founder's mindset is, my best customer is anyone who'll sign the back of a check. And so they can't do what you're describing. They'll never see scale.
Correct. 100% correct, right? And I know we started with saying, hey, let's talk about that transition phase, but I think it's important to understand what it looks like before, so we can talk about the transition a little bit better, right? So
Yes.
I'll quickly get through this piece. So high retention, right, for at least 4 usage periods, and this is the very popular Sean Ellis test of asking everybody who's using your product, hey, how disappointed would you be if this product went away tomorrow, right? And you want at least 40% of people surveyed to say they'd be very disappointed,
Then you
right? And
double
that's
the
a
price. No, I'm just kidding.
yes, absolutely, right? Until people scream at you and say, no, I'm done, you keep doubling the price, right? And this is important, right? The nuance here is, I like to ask this question after those 4 periods of usage, because now they've experienced the product enough to care and say they really would be disappointed, right? So now I have the quantitative piece, I have the qualitative piece, and the third piece I know is the sort of touchy feely piece, which is what people generally tend to describe as that organic pull that is happening. Like you're telling everybody, hands off the keyboard, don't touch anything, something's happening, I don't know what's happening, but nobody do anything, right? People are just coming through the door, and that tends to happen a lot because when you tend to have highly rabid users or customers, they talk about you, they will bring people in. I have gotten emails and DMs. People are literally asking me, "Hey, can I tell my friend about this?" Like, hell yes, you can tell your friend about this. Like, why are you asking me?
You can't tell your friend, but you can tell your friends.
Right, absolutely. Right. Right. So when I see these 3 signals, right, I triangulate high retention, a lot of very disappointed people qualitatively, and this organic pull that's happening. To me, that is strong product market fit, right? And that's what's telling me, okay, now I'm ready to transition to growth. So now I'm taking, as we spoke about a little while back, everything I have learned during product market fit should help me take the next step forward, which is now I've learned who I'm building for. Now I've learned what I'm building. I've learned what I need to communicate for the very next person to come in through the door. I have learned about the behavior of my very best people, which is I can look at, I always tell startups I work with, look at the people at any phase you're interested in and look at the 10 people who are behaving as good as or better than you would expect them to behave without any prompting. These are your very best customers or users. And you want to take a real microscope to these people and see, okay, you can interview them, but also look at what they did, right? It's like, what did they do with the very first thing when they encountered your product, right? What did they click on? What did they find frustration with? And some of this you can get through analytics tools. Some of this you can do just through interviews at the right time with these people. And you want to basically reverse engineer their entire journey from the very second they saw your product. And what you will find is that amongst your 10 best people and everybody else, there is something pretty different. And that is how they behaved the very first day they saw your product. And that is what you will find is a pattern that you want to bake into the first experience of your product, because you want every new person who is like them that you put into your product experience to behave exactly like them. So you want to make what they did and what they saw as easy to do and see for the next person without your hand holding, right? So you take what you have learned through the product market phase of, okay, here's how they behaved. Let me engineer my first experience just as if it was these people. Just me not doing any hand holding, or me not having any oversight over it as deeply as I used to, because now there's too many people coming in, right? So that first experience being engineered allows me to put people through that equation of, I'm putting X kind of person through Y kind of experience, I expect Z kind of outcome, right? And that hypothesis is built off of what I learned through the product market phase, doing exactly that non-scalably, now trying to do the same thing scalably.
It makes so much sense. It makes so much sense that you need to quantify what your ideal prospect is in a meaningful way based on real usage before you try to replicate that at scale.
No, absolutely, right? Because what tends to happen, right, is this lack of understanding of how to optimize value delivery before pouring gas on growth, right? So what the general traps that tend to hit people, right, is like they have not understood what that must have experience even is for people, right? They haven't, in many cases, set up measurement systems, which is like, what the hell were you doing all this time, right? And because they haven't done that, right, they kind of haven't understood how to maximize for a high percentage of people reaching that must have experience, because without that they're not going to come back. And look, we for now, I want to say a decade plus, live in a world, especially since mobile and phones and you know all of these apps have happened, our patience, right, has gone down to zero for things. All right. And if we don't get something quickly, we move on. There's too many other things taking up our time, right? Not to mention, I think many founders live in this almost willful ignorance of theirs is the only product that exists in the entire universe. Like we have lives, right? I have doom scrolling on Instagram to do. Like I have no time for your bro.
I'll go one step further. If by some miracle you do find yourself in that position, that's not necessarily a positive. It probably means you don't have a big enough market that anyone has cared to solve that problem.
For sure, right? And so, if we don't design for these first experiences really well, let's face it, there is no second experience. It's game over,
Yes, couldn't agree more.
right?
Again, I'll go back to the old staffing model because it's sufficiently ugly to drive your point. Very often, back in the days when I was doing pure staffing, the first opportunity we get to work with a new client, it was almost always a garbage role, something that's been open for about a billion years that 200 other agencies took a swing at. Their internal team, didn't come close. But regardless of that, you got one shot. Obviously the goal is to fill it, but if you can't fill it, you've got to show a strong, candidate flow, show them that you're the goods and this was an unfillable role, because you rarely get a second shot. Rarely.
correct. So I just want to bring this back a little bit, sort of high level. What are we talking about, right? So we say product market fit is about must haveness and learning
Yes.
who has that deep need, right? The transition out, which again, these are not phases, right? There's no hard lines. These are like sort of blurred lines, right? But
Right.
as you're getting out, right, you're trying to understand something about how to. You learned a little bit out of retention. In that blurred phase, a little bit out, you're now trying to learn how to acquire and retain customers consistently using what you have learned through the initial parts of the product market phase, right? But that's just the first part of it, right? Everything we've spoken about, right, is just getting through that first part of transition to growth. And for the longest time I thought this was all I needed to do, and that was before I understood the concept of unit economics, uh, right? Because it's great to get people, right, but ultimately this is a business, and we need to make money of this thing in
Yes.
some fashion. But now we've set the foundation for that to happen, because now we have validated learning on how to acquire and retain consistently. Without that foundation, nothing is happening, right? And so this is what some people like to call the go to market phase, right? So if you want to think of it as a product market phase, a go to market phase, as growth phase, right, this is part of that as well, where now you're transitioning from acquiring and retaining customers consistently to acquiring and retaining customers consistently and scalably, right? Because as you were talking, right, what is scalability? Scalability is ensuring we have a large enough target market to support whatever growth aspirations you have. And as we pursue that big growth, that we can do so in a profitable manner. And in the early stage, the only way to measure profitability, I think, is using unit economics, because that's what allows us to sort of extract out whatever fixed costs. So then we can more closely analyze, like, how financially sustainable scale is for the business, right? So while you want to build out that scalable product experience, right, the ultimate quantifiable goal of this intermediate phase, right, is to prove your company's ability to acquire and retain customers with strong unit economics,
It makes
right?
perfect sense. I hate to oversimplify, but I'm such a fan of boiling things down to the basics. I think it was Einstein that said everything should be as simple as it can be, but no simpler.
Right.
What I keep hearing as a recurring theme, and I think this is an oversimplification, is to keep your curiosity high and make sure you're asking why questions as you're progressing. Why is this person doing this? Why are they not doing it? What about this is of interest to them? So that you can feed your scale machine when you get there accurate data so that you have hopes of a high return.
And you're absolutely right in that this is the biggest trap, and I have fallen into it too. So this is not me dinging anybody, that the desire to over index on quantitative data is extremely high because it's so much easier to get. But all quantitative data tells us is what happened. We need to do exactly what you said, which is you actually need to be talking to people very regularly, weekly, at this phase, to understand why the thing happened. Because without understanding why something happens, you will come up with the exactly wrong hypothesis about how to make something more happen or happen less, right? And that why is as much about who did it, how did they do it, when did they do it, to understand the why correctly. And I have, oh my god, done so many of these homepage experiments early in my career where I looked at Google Analytics and said, oh, people are not clicking here. I looked at click maps and say, oh, they're not clicking here. Let me move these things around and, I'll make it happen. And maybe I had some minor success, but in some cases, it made no difference. In all of those cases, the thing I completely missed was doing some sort of user interviews, some customer research to understand, like, hey, even who were you? Why did you come here? What were you looking for? That made you behave this way, right? And that would have made my hypothesis so much smarter, and I would have been so much ahead in my career, so much faster. Just being comfortable and not being scared of the truth. I think a lot of people
Yes,
are scared of hearing the truth,
I
and
couldn't
all
agree
growth.
more. And I'll tell you, if only there's that old saying that youth is wasted on the young. If only
Yeah.
we could have all the experience we gained late in life earlier on. Listen, you shared so much, Anuj. If you could give one piece of advice to any founder, what do you think that advice would be?
So the one thing I keep coming back to is the only growth hack is your rate of learning. And because if you keep testing more hypotheses than your competition, by definition, you're going to learn faster than your competition about what works and doesn't work for your customer base. They can try and copy you all they want. They will be two steps behind because they can only see what's in front of them. They don't know what you learned right now, right? So my challenge to every team I work with is, are you smarter this week than you were last week or not?
I love that. I
Okay.
love that. I tell everyone who I mentor, whether they're internal employees on my teams or clients I'm consulting for, that success in business and in life is a commitment to ongoing education. And it sounds like from a corporate perspective, that's the same. What more have I learned about my company, my clients, and my process that I can use to get an advantage over the competition?
Yeah, absolutely right, because I think the minute you stop learning, you have fallen behind.
We have an old saying in martial arts, if you're not growing, you're dying.
100%, right? And it's true of everything, right? Like, it's literally
Yes.
every second and every day that you are not learning. It's somebody is out learning you, somebody's out executing you, somebody is learning how to become better at X than you. I mean, this is discipline. This is very hard to do. Let's not kid ourselves about it, right? But that's what it takes to win in any sphere of life, right? And as I was saying earlier, and somebody much smarter than me, said this, and I have internalized it, that growth, and you can apply this personally or professionally, growth is nothing but the pursuit of truth,
Yes.
right? And whatever that form that takes, right, run with it. But that, I think, is a true North Star for any professional that claims to be a growth professional, marketing, sales professional, any sort of professional. That if this is not the thing you're looking for, then I don't think you're going to make it.
No, I couldn't agree more. Listen, Anuj, as always, you packed 40 minutes into 30, and it's very obvious I'm going to need to have you on the show again to keep going. But let's
Done.
wrap things up now. We're a little bit over our regular time. If people want to learn more, and folks, if you don't want to learn more, I don't know what to tell you. But if people want to learn more about you and to reach out and contact you directly, how can they best find you?
LinkedIn is the best place. I am Anuj Adhiya on LinkedIn. I'm, of course, the best Anuj Adhiya on LinkedIn as well. That should have been obvious by now.
No, that's awesome. Thanks again for being on. You're always a wonderful guest.
Awesome. No, this is so much fun to nerd out with you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.